Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere. I'm your host, Connor Jones, and this week I'm bringing you yet again another story from that tiny town we all love, Poverty Flats, Wyoming. Well, actually, this story does take place in another state on the other side of the country, but it is Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere. Before we get started, here's a message from our sponsors. This week, our sponsor is Basin Pharmacy in Basin, Wyoming. Basin Pharmacy is your hometown pharmacy, as well as your source for over-the-counter medicine, vitamins, and supplements. They also carry office supplies, Russell Stover chocolates, and greeting cards. The friendly folks at Basin Pharmacy are happy to help with any of your medicinal needs, whether you have a prescription to fill or a question about your meds. You can stop in Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. We are also sponsored by the Wyoming Welcome Program. The Wyoming Welcome Program offers two services to local businesses: Table Talk and the Wyoming Welcome Baskets. Wyoming Welcome Baskets are filled with promotional items for local businesses and distributed to new move-ins to the Bighorn Basin. Table Talk brochures include jokes, facts about the state of Wyoming, the month's holidays, and advertisements from our local businesses. These brochures are placed on restaurant tables in Cody and Powell for diners to peruse. So if you'd like to get your business name out there, please contact the folks at the Wyoming Welcome Program by shooting an email to HaleyJ, that's HALEYJ, at wyomingwelcome.com. I am putting out a call for any new sponsors. If there's someone out there who's listening that would like to get their business name out and get an endorsement from the podcast, be sure to contact me. You can reach me at untoldtalesthepodcast@gmail.com or shoot me a message on Facebook, and we'd love to help you out, and you can make sure we're able to keep doing what we do here, bringing the outdoors and a little bit of humor into everybody's lives. So please contact me if you are interested in becoming a sponsor for the show. Now, the podcast. We are going to finish West Meets South. The Jones boys and their spouses have been in South Carolina, and it's about time we got that story finished and brought them home. But the last part is one of the best parts. So I'm excited to bring you part 3 of West Meets South. So here we go. If you'll remember, at the end of part 2, we were just finishing our tour of Fort Sumter, and Fred and I came back to the car and found that, thankfully, we did not get another parking ticket. So, I say another parking ticket because when we were going to college in Rexburg at BYU, Idaho, shout out to BYU, Idaho. I love the university. But the parking is horrendous. Or maybe Fred and I just didn't know anything about parking growing up in Otto, Wyoming. But I paid my fair share of parking tickets at BYU, Idaho. And we were overjoyed not to have a parking ticket when we came back to our vehicle after our Fort Sumter tour. So here is part 3, the final part. After we picked up Lily and Sarah, we drove further into the city looking for, you guessed it, a place to park. Fred wanted to show us the historical buildings in Charleston, but we also wanted free parking. It was as hard to find as it is in a game of Monopoly. Growing up, I never really understood why free parking was such a big deal, but I was beginning to. "How about this street?" Fred asked, driving slowly down a side street. "No, it says paid parking," Sarah said, looking out the window. On the other side of the street, narrow 2- and 3-story homes with elegant porches rose above us. They were painted in a variety of colors, and at the level of the second story, large metal squares with a bolt in the center jutted out. Fred informed us that these had been installed to help make the old buildings more earthquake-resistant, and they held the second floor to the outside walls. "Here," I said. "This one is free." "Thank goodness." Fred sighed and pulled off the street in front of a house with an ornate wrought iron gate. Well, he pulled as far off the street as it was possible to do. We clambered out of the car, and I grabbed our insulated lunch bag and slid one arm through the straps so it hung from my shoulder. We waited to cross as a car carefully navigated the tiny street. I get the feeling when John Culpeper established the Grand Model in 1672 for this city, he didn't have motorized vehicles in mind. Fred grinned. "I think you're right," Lily agreed. "Some of these streets are tiny." "Did you say 1672? I asked. "Charleston is that old?" "Yes," Fred said. "Take a look at some of these houses. This is an original street, and most of these houses have plaques on the side that tell how old they are." Sure enough, on the side of the nearest house was a plaque declaring its date of construction to be nearly 100 years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. "Gee, this house is older than the United States," I gasped. "Most of these houses are," Fred nodded. Charleston was founded by a group of colonists led by William Sale. He received the land as part of his commission for his loyalty to King Charles. He and 8 others called the Lords Proprietors were given the entire Carolina territory. It started at the border of present-day Virginia in the north and extended to present-day Florida in the south. "Wow, that's a lot of land," said Lily. "How far west did it go?" "As far as the Lords Proprietors could find men to settle it," Fred said with a grin. The name of the settlement was originally Charlestown, in honor of the king. We continued walking east, and eventually came to a street with a sign on the corner announcing it to be East Bay Street. The street was wider than Trad Street with 2 lanes of traffic. Trad Street continued in front of us, and off in the distance through the trees, we could just catch a glimpse of some patches of blue. "There's the ocean," Sarah said, pointing. "You could see it from here." "Yes, but you need to see this," Fred said, motioning for us to follow him. He glanced both ways and then crossed the street, and we followed close behind. On the other side of the street, he stopped and pointed at the ground. "See this?" he asked. "It's a cobblestone street," I said. "Yes," Fred nodded. "There aren't many of them left in Charleston. The entire peninsula is made of sand, so these stones didn't come from anywhere near here. They're actually from England." "From England?" Lily asked. "Yep. They're ballast stones from ships. When they got here from England, they would unload some ballast to make room for the cargo they would be taking back to England. So the colonists used them to make streets. What else do you notice here?" I continued looking down, imagining the stories each of these rocks could tell. They were a long way from their original homes. "Wait, there are some bricks here," Sarah observed. Sure enough, a line of bricks cut through the cobblestones beneath our feet, and the line continued north and south, cutting across the street and an empty lot beside us. "What is it?" I asked. "It's the seawall," Fred smiled. "The walled city of Charleston." "This is the seawall?" Sarah asked, looking down at the row of bricks in the ground. "Well, it was," Fred conceded. "They found it when they were doing some renovations on the buildings near here. This part is visible because they purposely exposed it on this street." "But the ocean is all the way over there," Lily said, pointing. "Exactly," Fred agreed. "This used to be the edge of the city. That's why this is called Bay Street," he said, pointing up the street that ran north and south. "Hundreds of years ago, all these streets were actually wharfs, and when ships would come to pick up cargo, they would dump ballast stones, and a lot of it would just go right over the side of the boat into the harbor. They also brought in fill when basements were dug in buildings, and eventually the peninsula grew. After hundreds of years, the ocean has continued to be pushed back to where it is today." "Wow," I said, gazing nearly 150 yards to the ocean. "That was a lot of dirt and rocks." Fred beamed. "Just one more thing about Charleston that makes it amazing. Now, let's go see Rainbow Row." He turned back toward the city and pointed. "There it is." I hadn't noticed it until now, but Bay Street was lined with a collection of pastel-colored row houses. They were sandwiched next to each other without a gap to spare, and the colors were as varied as they were vibrant. Pink butted up against blue and was followed by green and yellow. "It's so pretty," gushed Lily. "Come on, let's get a picture of you two," she said to Sarah and Fred. "Go across the street and I'll take one." The two of them crossed the street and held hands as Lily snapped a picture. "Now you two," Fred insisted. Lily handed him her phone, and we waited for a pickup to pass before Lily and I walked hand in hand across the street. Taking our position in front of the row of houses, I threw my arm around Lily, and we flashed smiles for the camera. I gave Lily a hug and kissed her hair as we waited for Fred and Sarah to join us. "This is so cool," Lily smiled, and I agreed. So these houses were falling into major disrepair, and a woman named Susan Pringle Frost bought a section of them to renovate and preserve them, and she's the one who started painting them like this. Before too long, she had inspired more investors and realtors, and the whole row ended up painted in pastels. Susan Pringle Frost is the one who actually started the Society for the Preservation of Old Dwellings, which later became the Preservation Society of Charleston, Fred informed us. "That's cool," Lily said, surveying the row of eye-catching colored houses. "Is this a garage?" I asked, noticing a set of double doors on the ground floor of one of the houses. "You know what? I think it is," Fred said, taking in the doors. "No wonder they bought this place," I said with a grin. "They don't have to worry about parking." That afternoon, we ate a sack lunch on a park bench in Washington Square, a little park behind the Charleston City Hall, in part because City Hall offered one of the few public restrooms. As per usual, I was blown away by the architecture and the sheer history of the city. "This is called the Four Corners of Law by the locals," Fred informed us. "You've got City Hall on this corner, the courthouse is over there, and that's the federal building. Then you've got St. Michael's Church right here. The Four Corners of Law: city, federal, state, and God's law." We all grinned and took in the buildings Fred had indicated. "St. Michael's is gorgeous," Sarah said, tilting her head back and shielding her eyes against the sun's glare in an effort to take in the enormous steeple on the towering white church. "Sure is," Lily agreed. We all marveled at the church, which had been there longer than the Union. "Oh, look, there's someone weaving sweetgrass baskets in front of the federal building," Fred said, pointing across the street. "You and your sweetgrass baskets," Sarah grinned. "I don't know why you like them so much." "They're cool," Fred said defensively. "I'd like a little one that's big enough to hold keys and things. I wonder if they could make one to order." "They might, but we don't have time to wait for someone to make a sweetgrass basket," Sarah said, taking Fred's hand and pulling him further down the block. "Okay," he shrugged. "Should we go see the Angel Oak?" "Let's do it," I nodded, and we started walking back toward the car, the spire of St. Michael's rising beside us as we walked with hundreds of other people, surrounded by buildings that had been built long before any of our grandparents were born. Little did I know, The amazement I felt by the history and architecture of downtown Charleston was about to be eclipsed in a big way. The Angel Oak was located several miles from downtown Charleston, deeper in the region I was learning to call the Low Country. We drove on a 4-lane highway past businesses and homes that were much more modern than the city. Everywhere you looked, there were trees and greenery, in sharp contrast to the wide open spaces and sandy landscapes of Wyoming's high desert. The sheer variety and quantity of trees was perhaps what most impressed me. If it weren't for the road and the clearings made for buildings, I was sure the entire state would be one solid mass of trees, interrupted only by the myriad rivers that crisscrossed South Carolina on their way to the sea. "Just look at how the live oaks hang over the streets," Fred pointed out. "I love it." "You said that this morning when we drove to Fort Sumter," Sarah observed. "Well, yeah, I know," Fred said. "But I just love the live oaks." As we turned off the main road, I could see what Fred was talking about. Nearly every side street and byway was shaded by the long, gnarled branches of live oak trees, some of which formed a complete arch with the trees' branches nearly touching over the top of the road. From all of the trees hung thick beards of Spanish moss, wisps of a dark green plant that looked for all the world like beards. Beneath the car's tires, the asphalt abruptly ended. Now we were driving down a dirt road, complete with washboards. "Now this is more like it," I said with a grin as the little Corolla bounced down the dirt road. "There are too many trees for it to feel like home, though," Fred said. "You're right there," I agreed. "Yeah, it's actually green here," Lily said. "It's not just barren and brown like Wyoming." "Now hold on there," I said, holding up a hand. "There are trees in Wyoming, just not nearly as many as there are here." "You can say that again," Lily nodded. "There are trees in Wyoming, just not as many." Oomph! I was cut short when Lily gave me a shove. "Gosh, you can be so annoying," she laughed. It was about that time we came upon a line of cars parked on the side of the road. "Looks like we're getting close," Fred said. We passed several more cars parked bumper to bumper, and even a shiny black motorcycle. Fred eased the car into an opening between a truck with North Carolina plates and a bright green Hyundai SUV. Further down the road, we could see a high chain-link fence with more cars parked in front of it. "So this oak tree, how old is it?" Lily asked as I slid my arm through hers and we followed Fred and Sarah toward the fence. "Gosh, it's old," Fred said. 400 or 500 years old is the estimate," he said. "Wow," I breathed. We passed some of what would be massive trees in Wyoming before coming even with the chain-link fence, and then we saw it. "Look at that," Lily said in a hushed tone. A truly massive tree rose high above the chain-link fence, and its branches spread out from it like some kind of enormous gnarled giant. I couldn't take my eyes off the tree as we scanned the tickets on our phones at the entrance and walked down a gravel path around the visitor center. Here and there posts had been placed under branches, propping them up like Moses' arms and Rephidim. And judging by this tree's appearance, it wouldn't have surprised me if it had been around when chapters were still being added to the Bible. In reverenced awe, we slowly approached the tree, joining a crowd of around 50 people milling around its trunk. I estimated the massive trunk was large enough for 6 people to join hands around it, and thick, rough bark covered every inch of the behemoth. Starting at about 6 feet off the ground, hulking branches shot off in every direction, and what was perhaps most unique about them was the fact that many sagged down and touched the ground, as if the weight of centuries had just been too much for them to remain above the earth. After making contact with the ground, a branch would rebound upward, giving the appearance that some of the branches were growing into brand new copies of the tree. I noted again the posts that kept some branches from making contact with the ground. "This is incredible," I gasped as we walked under one of the immense branches. "Isn't it?" Fred agreed. "When we came here during my mission, there wasn't a fence around the base of the tree," Sarah observed, indicating a yellow plastic chain that cordoned off the angel oak. A sign asked visitors to refrain from touching, hanging, or laying on the tree. It made sense to me. Anything this old could certainly be damaged by too much contact, especially with a site as popular as the angel oak appeared to be. "So how old is this tree?" Lily asked. "Like I said, estimates range from 400 to 500 years old," Fred replied, gazing up at the leaves and branches spreading above us. "Wow," I said. "That means this tree was here before the Declaration of Independence was signed. It was probably a sapling when Columbus landed in the New World." "That's insane," Fred grinned. I really hadn't expected to be so amazed by a tree, but I found to my surprise that I was deeply moved by the magnificence of such an old, incredibly huge living thing. My 28 years of age paled in comparison to the angel oak. My life was a blink of an eye to such an old tree. Heck, to the angel oak, it probably seemed like I was born last week. Then again, I don't think trees have opinions on that kind of thing, or opinions in general. But the perspective was certainly humbling. "I'm glad they preserved this tree," I said. "What an incredible place." "Here, let's go take a picture," I said. We found someone to take a picture of our group, and the four of us stood with the tree behind us for a photo. I couldn't help but think about our family, and how, if you could see our roots and branches in the picture, they would stretch back in time and go forward in time, just as far, and even farther than the roots and branches of the angel oak. Looking at the angel oak, it wasn't hard to see why trees are so often used to symbolize families. Back on the road, Fred said, "Gee, I love how the live oaks hang over the road, don't you?" He winked at Sarah, and she rolled her eyes. Fred grinned and asked, "Well, who wants some barbecue?" One of the things we had been most looking forward to about visiting South Carolina was real Southern barbecue, and I thought it was high time we found some. "Yes, please," I cheered. "We were going to go to the Early Bird Diner," Fred said, "but I don't know if it's open." I did a quick Google search and shared the bad news. "Yeah, it looks like it closes at 2, I said. "How about Bessinger's?" Fred asked. "They have really good reviews." "Do they have barbecue?" Lily asked. "Oh, yeah," Fred replied, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Then let's do it," Lily grinned. When we pulled up to the restaurant, the lettering on the building announced its name. Bessinger's Barbecue. That's spelled Bar, B-Q. We clambered out of the car, and my mouth was already watering. The parking lot was pretty full, and it didn't take long to find out why. Lily and I ordered a sampling of brisket, pulled pork, fried okra, and green beans, with some bread on the side. To our surprise, bread meant cornbread at Bessinger's. The meat did not disappoint, and neither did the sauce. It was so good, Lily and I bought a bottle of mustard-based barbecue sauce to take home with us. "This is amazing," I said, shoveling another bite into my mouth. "I wish I could make barbecue like this." "Right?" Lily said. On the TV behind Fred and Sarah, some talking heads were giving the latest update on politics. Fred turned in his seat to watch for a bit and comment on whatever topic was being discussed. Most of the tables were full, and seeing all the different food made me wish we could try everything. There were hush puppies, enormous onion rings, collard greens, mac and cheese, French fries, and of course, the meat. Brisket, pulled pork, and jerk chicken, sandwiches and burgers. Everything looked delicious. Just then I noticed a couple holding hands and praying over their meal. We had blessed our food as well, but we didn't make a habit of holding hands when we did it. I just love the South, I said to Lily. It's good to see people praying. Who's praying? Fred asked in a voice that was agonizingly loud, and he began looking around. Shh, Sarah hissed, her face going beet red. Some people over there. Be quiet. We couldn't help it. Pretty soon, all four of us were trying unsuccessfully to stifle our laughter, and I was very thankful both for the distance between us and the other table and the dividers between the booths. Sorry, Fred said in a hushed voice. I thought a politician was praying on the news, and it caught me off guard. Oh my goodness, Sarah said, wiping her eyes with a napkin. I can't take you anywhere. The next day, after attending church at one of the wards where Sammy served as a missionary nearly a decade before, we visited Boone Hall, the plantation where several scenes from The Notebook were filmed. The two women in our party made sure we were well prepared for our pilgrimage by organizing a watch party for the movie in our Airbnb the night before. I have to say, I'm not the kind of guy to watch a Nicholas Sparks movie for fun, but The Notebook may have tugged at a few heartstrings. I'm not admitting to anything, though, and the bittersweet ending definitely wasn't enough to keep Fred and I from joking around at the plantation. If you've ever been to Boone Hall or seen pictures, then you know the driveway is one of the coolest things about the entire place. The dirt road into the plantation house, dubbed Avenue of the Oaks, is a gorgeous tree-lined road that may be the most picturesque driveway in the United States, if not the world. The towering live oaks, draped in Spanish moss, are spaced regularly along both sides of the lane, and the effect is breathtaking. I made sure to snap a few pictures on our way in. The plantation is actually a functioning farm, and they produce a variety of crops, from strawberries to pecans. We heard all about it in the tour we took on a large wagon pulled by a shiny green John Deere tractor. Following the tour, we listened to a presentation by a Gula woman. Gula refers to the descendants of enslaved people in the Low Country, and we were blown away by the woman's singing and the stories she shared about slavery in South Carolina. Her accent and the Gula she spoke were hard for Western ears to understand, but her message of resilience and pride in her culture were not. At the gate to the mansion, Fred and I couldn't help it. We had to make a Notebook joke or two. Allie, come back, Fred wailed, throwing himself at the wrought iron gate in front of the sprawling mansion. Allie, where are you? I called out, making a show of frantically searching the grounds. Stop, you two! There are people around! Lily chided, trying hard to hide her laughter. You two shouldn't be allowed to go anywhere together, Sarah added in exasperation. Though we never did find Miss Allie, the heroine of the Notebook, we did see several of the rooms in the mansion, which made my house look like a shoebox. Apparently, the mansion was built by a Canadian diplomat who purchased the plantation together with his wife, an American heiress. The existing home wasn't large enough for the lavish parties he wanted to throw, so they had the mansion built. Too bad World War II broke out, and he and his family couldn't spend more time there. Today, the plantation is owned by the McRae family, who operate the farm and the tourist attraction. Well, if Miss Allie isn't here, I think we've seen about everything we wanted to see, Fred grunted as we exited the plantation. Yeah, we got to see Mr. Stone's man cave back there, so we're good, I think, I added. I'm still disappointed we didn't get to see Miss Allie, though. Lily rolled her eyes. As our time in South Carolina came to a close, we were sad to leave. The whole trip had been amazing, and spending some quality time with Fred and Sarah was a ton of fun. We missed our kiddos, but since they were staying with their grandparents, we were sure they had even more fun than we did. In most of the FaceTime calls we placed home, they were too busy eating ice cream or playing at the park to want to talk much. We were looking forward to seeing them, and Lily and Sarah especially. It's hard for a mama to be separated from her babies for very long. Our flight left early on Monday morning, and as the plane climbed above Charleston, I heaved a sigh. I have to go to work tomorrow, I complained. It'll be hard to go back for sure, Lily agreed. But wasn't this a great trip? Yes, it was, I nodded. We checked all the boxes. Great food, cool historical sites, Boone Hall, and even some fishing. Lily grinned. Yes, even some fishing. Too bad Southwest is changing their free checked bag policy. I don't think you'll get to check a fishing pole the next time we come to South Carolina. I raised my eyebrows. Nah, I think I will. We can fit all our clothes in a carry-on, right? Lily rolled her eyes. You might be able to fit all your clothes in a carry-on. But what about the boys? We have 3 of them, you know. The next time we come, all the boys are coming too? I asked. I think so, Lily said. They would love it. Well, I said, I guess you're right. I probably won't be checking a fishing pole. I'll be checking 4, 1 for each of us. Lily heaved an enormous, completely unwarranted sigh and leaned back in her seat. I'm going to take a nap. As we sped towards home at 30,000 feet, I thought back contentedly over the past few days. South Carolina had been a lot of fun, and I had thoroughly enjoyed my first taste of saltwater fishing, in addition to all the other amazing things we had done and seen. But I had to admit, I was glad to be heading back to Wyoming. It may not be as green as the South. It may not have the ocean, or 300-year-old buildings, or even live oak trees. But the West is home for me. There you go. That's part 3. We wrapped up the South Carolina vacation. Thank you for sharing it with me, and hopefully this story was as entertaining as my other ones. I just felt like this trip was too good to pass up, and it really was pretty interesting seeing the differences between the southern United States and the West. And I'm sure we stuck out like a sore thumb everywhere we went. But then again, there were a lot of tourists in South Carolina, so we weren't alone. If you have ever been to Charleston, I'd love to hear about it. And if you haven't been, I highly recommend Charleston as a vacation destination. It's a very cool place, and once you get outside the city, it still feels like it's, more rural. But overall, it was just a very cool trip, and shout out to Adam and his wife, Sammy, for inviting us. We really enjoyed it, and we hope to do another trip like this again. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe. Sign up for our newsletter, to get notifications if you would like to continue listening, and suggest the podcast to all your friends. I enjoy sharing these stories, and I'd love to keep sharing them with as many people as I can. So, this has been another episode of Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much, and still find time for the important things, like fishing. See you next time, folks.